Hi, and thank you so much for popping by. My name is Dr. BIDPA, and you're most welcome to this conversation today. In this clip, I'm specifically pivoting off an article that I read on the Sunday Standard Botswana, which is talking about this idea of energy poverty having a female face. Now, what is interesting about this particular title and this particular idea is that in the context of Botswana, in the context of Southern Africa and the larger region of Sub-Saharan Africa, HIV also has a female face. And the connecting factors there are this term poverty, right? If it were not for poverty, we wouldn't have energy poverty. If it were not for poverty, we wouldn't have these high rates of HIV, specifically and disproportionately affecting women and girls. When we speak of poverty, we also see its link when it comes to the digital divide, right? When we speak of poverty, we can see the link when it comes to lack of access to clean and healthy water. So poverty has it has a very hindering ripple effect on multiple areas. In other words, poverty is not one dimensional. So in other words, poverty is not one dimensional. And that's why I think this report by BIDPA provides an opportunity to close the gaps. So again, it's not surprising that when we talk about poverty, we're talking about households that don't have refrigerators. We're talking about households with no radios. We're talking about households with no mobile phones. And ultimately, in the bigger scheme of things, we're talking about populations with lack of access to information. So all of these statistics are speaking to this gendered aspect of poverty. So all of these statistics really reinforce and emphasize this concept of a gendered aspect to poverty, right? And this is why this BIDPA report really stood out for me, because as somebody who has studied health communication, as somebody who has studied this idea of communication ecologies, I can absolutely understand why there is energy poverty, specifically in a region such as Sub-Saharan Africa and countries, including Botswana, which have high margins of inequality. And that's why there's a lot of pressure from organizations such as the United Nations to ensure that countries, right, on a national level, countries are able to meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Because you cannot talk about development and developing when you have such high margins of poverty. This idea of energy poverty, it is basically described as the lack of access to energy, right? And I know the concentration of this idea of energy poverty is also seen in the context of the rural areas. But we know that within Botswana towns and cities, there are still families, these female-headed households that are cooking with firewood. We know this very well. But we also can see an opportunity when we talk about this lack of access to devices such as solar panels. It means that there's an opportunity somewhere for us as a community to come through and provide some of this alternative resources, right, when it comes to energy, such as solar panel devices. In a previous clip, I spoke about how research is showing that there is a low uptake in solar panel devices in Botswana. And there are multiple reasons for this, but one of the major reasons as well is that there's a lack of knowledge. So I see an onus, right, for those who are in this renewable energy sector to really provide the public with more knowledge about the benefits and the disadvantages of using solar panels or renewable energy. We need to be hearing more from the voices of these women who are experiencing energy poverty. What are they using at the moment? What approaches or strategies are they using to fill this energy poverty gap? What are the strategies they've been using to try and access the more cheaper and affordable energy? Because for all we know, these women have found something that is sustainable, and all they need is the support to make this a more sustainable approach, right? Because without the means, it means whatever concepts they've been using to try and access energy may need to be supported in order to elevate those concepts into a more sustainable and doable thing, right? So this idea of walking long distances to get firewood, walking long distances to get clean water, walking long distances to access medical care and health services, this is all connecting to this idea of poverty, right? Because as we know, Botswana is currently going through a public health crisis where there is a lack of access specifically to HIV prevention, treatment, and care services. And when that happens, we already know that if there's energy poverty, which is having a female face, it means this lack of access to health services and HIV treatment and prevention is also having a female face, right? So apart from advocacy, raising awareness, putting pressure, there is also an opportunity for us as community to come through and see how we can develop strategies to fill these gaps, such as those we see in the energy poverty area. So I think this BIDPA report about energy poverty, apart from really illuminating and highlighting this gender gap and the gendered aspect of energy poverty, the BIDPA report is also giving an opportunity for us as community, for those of us who can, to provide these more long-term and sustainable solutions in the area of renewable energy access, right? So that's all I wanted to say about this idea of energy poverty having a female face, and to connect it to this concept of HIV having a female face, specifically in poor regions such as sub-Saharan Africa. Alrighty, my friend. Thank you so much for popping by. I hope you are having a lovely day where you are. But most importantly, I hope you're having a healthy day wherever you're watching me from. Bye.